Buddha Dhamma Sangha. In one day, how often do you think of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha? How often does it come up in your mind that you bring up the quality of mindfulness, or that you reflect on the teachings, or put the teachings into practice in one way or another, whether it's the practice of generosity, sila, ethical living, ethical action, or bhavana, cultivating mindfulness and insight. Just in one day, how often are these qualities and these aspects of the Buddhist teachings coming up for you in your mind, in your life? So your own personal life, it's like a microcosm of the world, is one part of the world. And you could say, well, Buddhism can flourish in an area and then disappear, say like in many parts of India, where there's no longer Buddhism practice, whereas once upon a time there was. Or in your own heart, in one day, there'll be times when you may reflect on the teachings, or consciously bring up mindfulness, or consciously refer to your practice of sila, the precepts, for example. And then there's other times of the day when you completely forget all about it and get lost or distracted, or your mind strays to more unskillful, unwholesome thinking or action. You may be able to observe that for yourself. And we all know that sometimes we get angry, worried. Sometimes our mind gets overcome by obsessive greed and attachment. There are those times when you might say Buddhism disappears from our heart and mind in just one day, even in the course of this one talk. Maybe your mind is already straying back home. What are the children doing? What is my partner doing? What's going on back home? Or what am I going to do tomorrow at work? Nothing to do with the Buddhist teaching. You've already gone out. Or you're thinking about, maybe you have a money problem. You're in debt. How am I going to pay my debt? So you start thinking about the bank or the mortgage rate or something like that. Yeah, it could be 101 different things you are thinking of, even in the course of this talk. Or maybe you're just thinking, why is the sound system not working very well? This is what we do. Our mind slips away from the Buddhist teachings in a moment. It can be gone, as we know. Where you see this most is if you ever try practicing some bhavana, some meditation. You may be instructed to practice a meditation technique such as anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. The teacher says, follow the feeling of the in-breath and the out-breath. Keep your mind focused on the breathing, pay attention to the in-breath, the out-breath. Don't let your mind stray. And then a few seconds later, already your mind has gone. No longer with the breath, no longer mindful, back lost with worries or thoughts or even falling asleep. How easily our mind strays away from the present moment, from the wholesome task that we've given it if we're meditating. So when you meditate, you notice straight away, oh, my mind is all over the place. And we all know that. That's exactly the sort of seed that will eventually lead to the disappearance of Buddhism from any part of the world. The fact that human minds are uncertain. Human minds are affected by what we call mental defilements. All those mental states rooted in greed, anger, delusion. Excuse me, is the battery dropping out? Sometimes that is a sign the battery is gone. So just as this microphone is coming in and out of your hearing, because perhaps something was wrong with the system or the battery was running out, your mind is coming in and out of the present moment all the time. One moment you're listening to the talk, the next moment you're thinking of something else or falling asleep. If we're honest and we're aware, we have to accept or admit that's what's going on all the time. So the moment we lose our mindfulness, what happens? You get a visitor knocking on your door, the door of your mind. It comes in. Who's the visitor? Is either greed, anger, or delusion, and all their children, all their offspring, one or the other. Maybe jealousy, or worry, or fear. All the different mental defilements, what we call asava kilesa, the word the Buddha used, although he used many different words. When we meditate, we often use the word hindrances, 5 hindrances. But as soon as you drop your guard, or you stop paying attention to the present moment, you lose your mindfulness, one of these will slip in. So in simple terms, we say they're the bad guys. If you leave your home, maybe tonight, I don't want to worry anyone here, but maybe you left home and you didn't lock the door or you didn't shut the window. While you're out here, one of the bad guys slips in and steals your computer or looks for your money, your jewelry or something. This happens all the time, and it even happens when people come to the monastery, because it's happened. People have come back and told me, while I was at the monastery, my house was burgled. And usually it's because somebody's left a window open and they weren't very security conscious. Same with our mind. You leave your mind open, the door of your mind or the window of your mind open, then the bad guys slip in. That greedy thought, that angry thought, the worry, the fear, the negativity, whatever, it slips in because we're not aware, we're not on guard. So you probably know the Buddha gave that simile for practicing mindfulness. You have to be mindful, pay attention, vigilant, on guard every moment. That's your goal, that's your aim. Just like a man carrying a bowl with oil or water full to the brim through the marketplace. He's carrying, but behind him walks a soldier with a sword raised. And the man is walking through this busy marketplace. I don't know what the local market's called, but imagine you were there, people everywhere, food stalls, noise, people coming, going. He's got to carry this. If he spills one drop of water, the guard behind will cut off his head. So there's serious consequences here. And just to add complications to the situation, there's a stage. Like in the old days in markets, you would have live entertainment, you have a stage, and on the stage is the most beautiful woman in town, all dressed up, dancing. Very seductively, very beautifully, she's dancing, there's music, there's dancing. And, if you glance across at the woman, you're not going to be able to keep this bowl of water or oil from, you may spill it, you'll tip it because you're not being mindful. So you can't glance at her, you can't bump into anyone, you can't trip over, you can't pick up your mobile phone because you'll spill the water and you'll get your head cut off. So imagine that was today. You're walking through town and you're carrying your bowl and the mobile phone goes off. Could you be mindful enough to ignore it? Even that much can we do. Sometimes you can't ignore your phone, can you? You become a slave, become attached to your phone. Everyone knows that. This is the kind of picture the Buddha was painting for practicing the kind of mindfulness, the level of mindfulness you're aiming for. in meditation and practice of this Buddhist path. Of course, we haven't reached that yet. We're still practicing. Nobody expects us to be perfectly mindful. But that's what you're aiming for if you want to uproot or pull out these mental defilements from your mind, or even prevent them from coming into your mind. They're what we call akanduka. Akanduka means like visitor. We use that word for a visiting monk. So like, I'm an akanduka monk here in Nalanda Center. I'm a visitor. I don't live here normally. These mental defilements don't normally sit in your mind. They're visitors. And that's actually a very positive thing, because it means you have a chance to block them, stop them coming into your mind, because they're not there all the time. They're impermanent, they're temporary. And that's why Buddhism works. That's why you can practice what the Buddha taught. That's why you can improve your life by improving your mind, by cultivating the quality particularly of mindfulness, but then also reflectiveness, wisdom, clear comprehension, wisdom, insight. Now, how do you know a mental defilement such as greed or anger or delusion is temporary? You have to be able to watch your mind and see it arise and pass away. Then you know, oh, this is impermanent, it's temporary, it's not there all the time, because I saw before I wasn't angry, then the anger comes up, and then later it passes away. And that's an essential insight to develop when we're observing and looking after our mind, because it gives us the tool to deal with these mental defilements. So my teacher, Ajahn Chah, very smart, he was contemplating his own mind, and he said, really, when you're meditating and practicing this Buddhist path, you're looking after your mind. It's a bit like you're sitting in the front of your house. So like, this is the front of Nalanda Center. So you have people coming in and out that door all the time. Someone's leaving now, someone else will come. But you're sitting on a chair. Just imagine there's only one chair in here. You're sitting on this chair. Whoever comes in, they look around, but there's only one chair. So, oh, nowhere to sit. So they go out again, because there's only one chair available and you're sitting on it. Essentially, basically, that's what you're doing in meditation. Your job is to keep sitting on your chair so no one else can take it over. So these mental defilements that cause us stress, distraction, suffering, cannot get a leg in, cannot sit down and take over that chair. That's your aim. And you don't have to use force. It's not a force thing where you're sort of fighting in the sort of aggressive physical sense. But it does require certain qualities such as virya, which is effort. You have to put in effort. You can't be lazy. It requires mindfulness, pay attention. And it requires some understanding. You have to understand what you're doing and why it's so important. Because if you don't see the importance of doing this, you're not going to try. Why would you? Like many things we do in life, we do because we see it's important. Like you have to go out and earn a living because you need money to pay for the bills, accommodation, food, clothing, all the essentials of life. You have to pay for them, and most people will need to work to do that. So you'll do it because you see it's important. Looking after your mind, pursuing the happiness that the Buddha was talking about, is exactly the same. You have to see the value of it, and then you'll be willing to look after your mind, practice in this way. And you have to keep practicing. Keep doing it to improve. But you get the bonus, you get the reward, is that you start to feel more relaxed, more at ease, the more you do this. Why do you feel more relaxed, more happy as you practice what the Buddha taught? Is because you're not letting the bad guys in, the ones who make you feel stressed. If you don't let in greed, anger, delusion into your mind is free, peaceful, happy. That's the reward, that's why we do it. So for this happiness is a bit more subtle. It's more subtle than the normal, what we call sensual happiness. We all know the normal kind of happiness of life. You go out, eat some nice food, you feel good, nice taste. You talk to your friend, have a nice conversation, that's enjoyable. We're always looking for that kind of pleasure. You have an itch, you scratch. You have a backache, you get a massage. We do all kinds of things to experience pleasure. But that kind of sensual pleasure is very temporary, doesn't last very long. It's even addictive, so you keep having to go back and look for more. So it's quite tiring as well. But the kind of happiness that comes when you practice mindfulness and you keep sitting on your chair, not letting the bad guys into your mind, that kind of happiness is much more profound, deeper, longer lasting, and with very little harm to us. Has few drawbacks, few disadvantages for us. It still can become the basis for subtle kind of attachment. You probably heard meditators say, oh, be careful, you'll attach to your samadhi, or you'll attach to the feeling of peace, bliss that comes up when you practice meditation. That's true, you can become attached. But it's probably a better attachment than attaching to watching soap operas or eating delicious food or something, which tends to have brings more problems with it. The attachment to spiritual happiness can come up, but it's something you can also work through, let go of. So generally, the Buddha was encouraging us to see the value of this, the value of developing what you might call spiritual happiness, or the happiness of Dhamma. Cultivating a mind free from greed, anger, and delusion more and more. Sure, there'll be times when we completely forget what the Buddha taught, we're completely unmindful, and the mind gets caught up again. We're suffering, we're worried, we're unhappy. This will happen from time to time, of course. But the idea is to keep practicing, developing these qualities, and little by little, like going up a mountain, like you have your important mountain nearby, which we were told about today. I forget its name, but it's the one that all the sailors used to use as a landmark as they're coming down Malacca Strait. They see this one big mountain in Kedah here. Going up a mountain, it takes time. So you have to be very patient and accept that you're not going to be able to get to the top maybe in one day or one go. But as long as you keep going and you keep going up, sooner or later you'll reach the top. Looking after your mind, practicing, putting into practice what the Buddha taught, will gradually bring you more and more happiness. And the double bonus is not just in this life, but in next life as well. Not much else can offer you that. You won't see an advert for any kind of investment or business activity that says we'll be giving you returns this life and your next life too. They haven't developed that yet. Or if they advertise like that, they're lying. But the Buddha can. Peace, happiness in this life and the next. And I know we can't prove the next life, but one thing to reflect on is, where did this life come from? Where we are now, where have we come from now? We've come from the past. So in this life, from when we were born to this day, we've been already practicing many good things. Sure, we may have problems, suffering, pain, troubles, difficulties. Yes, we've all had that. But where you are today, you've obviously created already some good karma. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here. You're all sitting very peacefully. That's already a sign you have a level of peace and well-being in yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to sit peacefully and well like this. You're able to listen to me I don't know how much you understand what I'm saying, but you're able to sit there very peacefully. That's good. A lot of you are smiling. That's another sign you have some good quality, some happiness. I'm sure none of you are starving, are you? You may feel hungry, but you're not starving. You've got money in your pocket, you've got food in the fridge at home. This is all your good karma, and that's all come through from the past. You're relatively healthy, you've got eyes, ears, brain that functions. This is all your good karma from the past. That's a sign that you've been practicing what the Buddha taught in the past already. So you're now receiving the fruits of your past good karma. That's something to rejoice in, be happy about. And you're making good karma now for the future as well. And as we know, in the hierarchy of karma and merit, we say making merit, making good karma, bhavana is the top. So like the Buddha said, seeing impermanence, the impermanence of your body, your mind, your thoughts, these mental defilements I've mentioned, if you can see them as impermanent, just today, one day, that makes your whole life meaningful. It's better to see impermanence for one day than to live 100 years not seeing it. If you live for 100 years but you don't have insight, you'll still be very deluded and attached and creating suffering without realizing it. Just one day of seeing impermanence, already you're reducing your suffering and your potential for more suffering in life drastically, dramatically, in a big way. But it's not a small thing. So the Buddha was encouraging us to recognize that, recognize the importance of this practice, the importance of looking after our hearts and minds, putting the Dhamma into practice every day. Because in his wisdom, he's like at the top of the mountain over there, big mountain. He's looking down. He can see everything. He can see all of us, see everyone else, see the nature of the world. And he's saying, in terms of happiness, what's the most useful thing you can do is listen to the Dhamma, practice dana, keep precepts, live in a moral way, ethical way, cultivate mindfulness, reflect on impermanence. This will be the most useful thing for you as human beings. And you're all very lucky because you have faith, you have an interest to listen to people like me and other teachers who come here. This is how Buddhism and the Buddhist teachings will survive in the world and flourish and grow in the world by growing in your hearts, each individual person's heart. So if you want Buddhism to last a long time, say for your children, grandchildren, in this area for future generations, number one thing you can do is practice it yourself. Because if you don't practice, who's going to practice? Many parents will come to monks and say, I want my children to learn about meditation, the 5 precepts, how to do good in life. And that's a very good thing. Parents, they love their children, they want the best for their children. But then I often ask, well, do you do these things? Do you meditate? Do you keep the 5 precepts? And sometimes they say, oh, me? No. I said, well, if you don't, why would you offer children do it? If they don't see you do it, they're not going to do it. And really that's how Buddhism has survived in the world. It may not have survived in India, although there's some Buddhism left, but not much. But it's grown and spread around the world to different places. How has it survived? It's because we hand it down from generation to generation. And a place like Nalanda Center, the name implies that. It's a place for learning, study, practicing Buddhism and preserving Buddhism through the practice. We preserve it through looking after the Tripitaka, the texts. We preserve it by putting it into practice and keeping 5 precepts, meditating, offering dana, particularly supporting Sangha. This is how we preserve Buddhism. So it's not only a gift for ourselves, but it's also a gift for other people, as I said, future generations. We're benefiting from previous generations. If they hadn't preserved all the suttas and the Tripitaka, if people hadn't been practicing meditation, samatha meditation, vipassana meditation, we wouldn't know, would we? We wouldn't. I wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. Nobody would be able to practice anymore. So we also have to be grateful for all those people before us who have practiced, previous generations. They preserved Buddhism through their practice as a gift for us. Even yourself, if you're one who's prone to self-criticism, you're very negative about yourself, sometimes you should pause and just reflect. You must have done good in the past to get to here, this point in your life, to be able to have faith in the Buddhist teachings, to come somewhere like this. You've already done good. You've already been helping preserve these Buddhist teachings, maybe last life, maybe many lives. Who knows? You can't remember now, but you can assume that must have gone on in the past. You must have practiced this before. So if you're ever feeling really angry with yourself, and you're feeling depressed, sad with yourself, just stop and think about this for a few moments. You may even have to say, thank you, self, for practicing Buddhism before to help get me to this point. I know Buddhism teaches that there is no self, so it's a bit of a contradiction, but sometimes we have to use the concept of self just to help us develop certain useful qualities such as gratitude, appreciation, goodwill, kindness, compassion. We still use the idea of self in certain reflections and situations because it's useful to us. On the highest level, there is no self. So there's no one practicing Buddhism, no one gets enlightened. But if you always talk like that, after a while everyone gets very confused. Nobody goes to work. Oh, I don't need to get up in the morning then. Nobody meditates. Oh, okay, I won't need to meditate then. After a while you get so confused you don't know what to do. So the teaching on not self is central to Buddhism, but it's also quite a high, well-developed insight that you have to treat with respect, treat carefully, because it can slip into a delusion, a wrong way of thinking, and it can make us lazy or irresponsible. You could say, oh, Buddhism teaches no self, therefore I don't need to help clean up after everyone goes home, because nobody owns Nalanda Center, there's no self, I'll just go off on my own, not do the work. People think like that. You hear monks speak like that occasionally. They say, oh, it's all no self, I don't need to do anything. Probably know Ajahn Chah's famous story about one of his monks who was staying in the forest and a tree fell on his kuti, his hut. This happens quite regularly. A branch fell down, made a hole in the roof, and he didn't fix it. He just carried on living in that hut with a big hole in the roof. You get rain, you get sun. One day Ajahn Chah was walking around the monastery inspecting things, and he walked past this hut and he saw the hole and he said, who lives here? Because in those days there were many monks in the monastery. And his assistant said, oh, that's where Ajahn Sinuan lives. So he called him down. He said, oh, come down. He said, why haven't you fixed the hole in your roof? And the monk said, well, I'm just practicing letting go, non-attachment, no self, non-attachment. Ajahn Chah said, oh, okay. Well, this kuti is supposed to protect you from the weather. So how does that happen if you've got a big hole in the roof? The monk thought he was being smart. He said, well, when the sun comes from the east, I move over there to get out of the sun. Or if the sun comes from the west, I move back here to get out of the sun. If it rains over there, then I move over here to stay dry. Ajahn Chah just said, this is the letting go of a water buffalo. This is not the real practice of no self. This is irresponsible or a wrong view. So no self is something you really have to think about deeply. It's a tool to help you let go of attachment that causes suffering, but it doesn't mean to say you give up on your responsibilities to the world. And even attachment is one that we often misunderstand, don't we? Buddhists say, oh, we're all practicing non-attachment, so shouldn't attach to anything. So then what do we do? But you do need to attach to something in the beginning. You're not yet ready to just witness and observe not self in everything. That comes through practice and insight. In the beginning, you need to attach, don't you? What do you attach to? Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. So in the beginning of any ceremony, we usually have Namo Tassa Bhagavato. We undertake the 3 refuges, go to the Buddha, the Dhamma, Sangha for refuge. That word, undertaking, means I'm attaching to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. You might say that's not what the Buddha taught, but you have to start somewhere. You do attach to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha more than anything else. Because for an undeveloped mind, a beginner, a newcomer, what do? If you don't attach to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, what are you going to attach to? The bank? Your favorite political party? Your favorite pop star? You're attached to something much worse. That's just how the unenlightened mind works. We'll go and attach to all kinds of things. The bad guys, again. We'll attach to greed, anger, and delusion. We'll be back with suffering in no time. So in the beginning, we do have to attach. We attach to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. We undertake to keep 5 precepts. It's an attachment, but it's a useful one to preserve this mind on the inside. Like Ajahn Chah used to say, the sila, moral discipline, living in an ethical way is a way to preserve the peace and the happiness of our mind. So it's like a protection, a boundary, or even he said it's like a shell. Like you go to the market in the old days, you buy a coconut, you buy the whole shell to get the milk and the flesh inside, but you take the whole husk, the shell, home with you. And he said sila is like that. You need it to attach to your sila first before you can really get to know your mind on the inside. It's like to get to the meat and the milk of the coconut, you need the husk to protect it. So you can keep it for a few days or carry it, and it will still be clean and edible inside. Your friend sees you carrying the coconut husk, they say, oh, why are you carrying the coconut? It's so heavy, you break open the husk, just take the meat. But if you break it open too quick, it's not going to last. In the sun, it will all go off very quickly or get dirty, or the dog will eat it or something. You need the protection first before you can eat it. Sila is like that. You need to attach to your sila first so that you calm down enough to be able to see your mind. You think if you're killing, stealing, cheating on your partner, telling a lot of lies, swearing, being insulting in your speech, getting drunk, there's no way you're going to see your mind to protect it from the bad guys, greed, anger, and delusion. There's no way you're going to do that. Your mind, you'll be too confused, too agitated. So the Buddha said, attach to Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha first, attach to the precepts first, and then even attach to your meditation object first. Why did the Buddha say do that? We're practicing non-attachment, aren't we? We're practicing to see everything is not self, not to be clung to as self. Because it will help us get to that point where we can see not self. We can see non-attachment. It's like the top of the mountain. You need the bottom of the mountain to get to the top. You can't jump to the top. No one can do that. You have to go up step by step. So you need those early steps, bottom steps, to get to the top. So the bottom steps are taking refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, 5 precepts, meditation objects. So you come on do a course in meditation, and they'll say, watch the breath. And it's quite frustrating and your mind wanders and it's annoying because you want to be with the breath and you're thinking too much. Okay, it takes a lot of patient effort, but you have to attach to the breath first before you can let go of the breath. Sounds funny, doesn't it? You attach to something so you can let go, but you need to. You practice mindfulness of breathing, you're practicing watching the breath, staying with the breath, rather than thinking about 101 other things. You're just with the breath. You attach to it, but as you do that, you're letting go of everything else. And this is one very important principle in Buddhism, is that to let go of everything else, and particularly the bad guys, greed, anger, and delusion, you've got to attach to something else first, something better. You attach to the Buddha, you attach to the precepts, you attach to your meditation object. So if you're with the breathing, say you're practicing meditation, you're with the breathing, when some thoughts about food or buying a new car or that new piece of clothing, or you're thinking of some attractive person you'd like to go out with, or whatever, you come back to the breath so you can let go of those thoughts. Or you're remembering someone who annoyed you, and you're very angry with them. You come back to the breath to let go of that anger. Or you're worried about something, you're worried about your money, you're worried about your health. You come back to the breath to let go of those worries. So you're using one thing to let go of everything else. Eventually you even let go of the breath, but that's a very advanced thing. You don't do that straight away. First of all, you attach to the breath. And it's like another step on your path up the mountain. You're getting a bit higher up the mountain by using the breath to let go of everything else. So there will be times when you do have this experience of letting go of almost everything in your mind. And when you're meditating, what happens if you're meditating on the breathing, sooner or later there'll be that day when you're sitting there and your mind becomes very still, calm, peaceful, and you're just with the breath. You're not worrying about your family, you're not worrying about work, even your health, your body, how it feels, what's going on. You're not thinking about that, you're not worried about that. Sounds, sights, nothing is bothering you because you are training yourself to be with the breath in that moment. So you've used the breath. If you're experiencing that, the mind is still, peaceful, happy. You've used the breath as a method to let go of everything else. And for a period of time, you can experience a mind that is free from all these other things. And you can say, now I sort of know more what the Buddha was pointing to, the fact that all these things are temporary, all these things can be let go of. You use your breath like that. And then the most important thing is, you stop and you reflect. I've let go of all these things. All these things are temporary. They're always changing anyway. And ultimately, they're not a self. Because if they were self, I couldn't let go of them. They'd always be there in my awareness, in my mind all the time. If you've let go of something, it just proves that's not you. That's not who you are. That's a very important insight, because that shows you any emotion, negative emotion, mental state, greed, worry, fear, anger, it can be let go of. It's clearly not self. It's not something you have to hold on to. You can let it go. You get a lot of joy, maybe. The release of, you see, these things can be let go of. It's like, you can see that. It's like you get a bit closer to the top of the mountain. You see, the top of the mountain, now I can get there. Now there's that chance. So this practice of non-attachment or letting go is quite a skill that you have to move up step by step. You can't just say, I'm going to let go of everything. You hear some people kind of strange, you don't need the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, precepts, monks, statues, don't need any of this. Well, if you are sitting at the top of the mountain, you might be able to say that. You've already reached Nibbana. But not many people have reached Nibbana yet. So sometimes these things are useful tools and aids and supports to help us to know our own mind better and to let go of some of the negativity, some of the attachments. You could say this is what Nalanda is for. We're not here to spend all our time making Nalanda the best Buddhist center in the world or in this part of Malaysia. Spend all our time here perfecting Nalanda as such. We're here to use Nalanda as a way to get progress towards Nibbana in our practice. So it's a useful place. Can always all be very happy. We built the center. It can be a place you come and listen to Dhamma, study, read the Dhamma, learn the Dhamma, practice the Dhamma, dana, sila, bhavana. But the center itself is not something you have to cling on to or attach to, is it? We look after it the best we can, but then you don't have to think too much about it. Once you've cleaned it up, it's maintained good enough, isn't it? Same as your body. You look after your body so you can practice Dhamma, but you don't have to be obsessed with your body forever, thinking about, oh, this body, how can I make it stronger, healthier? What about this problem I got? My aches and pains, or my illness, this, that. You do your best with your body, try and keep it healthy as best you can, and then you let go. Because we've got to let go of our body one day. But for the moment, though, we look after it, we use it as a tool, a vehicle, and then we'll let go. You want to go to Nibbana, it's not like you take this body with you to Nibbana, do you? You let it go when you die. It's not like you have to take Nalanda Buddhist center with you to Nibbana. Carry it on your shoulders up the mountain, and I've got Nalanda on my back, oh, it's so heavy. You use these things, but then you let go. So maybe I've been talking for quite a while now about a few different aspects of Buddhist practice. Maybe I'll finish my offering this talk at this point, and afterwards there may be a chance for a discussion or Q&A. So I wish you all well in your practice.